to be able to turn.
Oh, no, the alternate Director Fike for Director Casely.
Thank you. Commissioner Main? Commissioner Popoff? Commissioner Popoff? Commissioner McNeil?
I saw you unmute there, I think, Erica, but I didn't hear anything come through. Were you acknowledging? Okay, you're still on mute, but thumbs are up there. I don't know, Pearl, you can
Look at those
fix that.
pipes.
I'm here.
Thanks. Is Walter Popoff present?
Negative, he's not.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Yakachuk?
I just got a text from Commissioner Yakachuk. It's Fike here. He's waiting for an upload to his WebEx. And then he'll join us.
Commissioner Graves? Commissioner
That's Wesley.
Wesley
That's the
Saville
52.
sitting in for alternative for Commissioner Graves.
Is that picking up?
It was, it's not right now.
And Commissioner Padfield?
He is present, yes.
Commissioner Law?
Present.
And Commissioner Denbrook?
Did you count Commissioner Denbach?
Pardon me?
Commissioner Denbach indicated he is present.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you.
So if I'm not mistaken, we have quorum, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Trying to figure out where this feedback is coming from.
We'll just do a test and see if they can hear us.
Okay. You've got the volume up on that thing?
It says it's working.
Okay, I'm gonna turn my volume down completely. Can I hear from anybody? Pearl, can you just test the mic, please? We're having some difficulties over here.
The sound should be, is the
There's
sound
nothing
okay?
coming through on that mic.
It keeps kicking me out.
Okay. Because if I turn the volume up on my computer, we're gonna have feedback.
Check.
Yeah, we could just discontinue. Okay, just a quick test. Pearl, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can. All right, so caller. I've got mine. Have you got your mic on or off?
Right now, it actually started to work. I'm muted.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, 4, I have 7 now. Counting myself. Ready to start the meeting. I'd like to call this Recreation Commission number 6 open meeting to order. It is currently 7:11 p.m. Oh, so you're actually going to be, if you have
Yes. No, that's okay. Sorry, it's Joe Carrico, I'm the General Manager of Community Services. As this is the first meeting of the year for Recreation Commission number 6, the first order of business is to elect a chair. If I will call for nomination 3 times. When someone is nominated, I will confirm with them that they are willing to stand. And if we have more than one nomination, then we will have another election. So calling for nomination for the first.
It's alternate Director Fike. I'd like to nominate Commissioner Casey Law for chair.
AC, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I'll accept the nomination. Thank you, John.
Calling for nomination the second. Calling for nomination the third time. Joe Carrico as the General Manager of Community Services, I ratify that Mr. Law as chair of Recreation Commission number 6, area based in Denver and Silverton. Full category 50,000.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. All right, so officially calling this meeting to order at 7:13 p.m. I'll do an acknowledgement of the traditional lands. So we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. And I'd like to have someone move to adopt the agenda. We can have a mover, please. Clarence. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes.
An item, I don't know where number is going, but it is to set the date for the dates that relate to the acceptance of the application for the spring frame.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear through the chair. This is Pearl.
Sure.
I couldn't hear what he said.
Sure, Pearl, I'll reiterate that. Commissioner Johnson has requested a amendment to the agenda with a new item 7.3, which is the spring grant timeline process and for advertisement. I'm going to say spring grant process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with the amended agenda, do I have someone to move that? Commissioner Johnson moves. I need a seconder, please. Okay. Commissioner Denbach is the seconder. Okay. And I'll call all in favor. I've got some folks online, so well, okay, I think I have more in the room here, so I will do all in favor, and if you can just raise your hands or say aye online, please. All in favor for the motion?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. And all opposed or any opposed? No, everyone voted for it anyway. Okay, motion is carried. The adoption of the agenda with the amendment. Move forward. Onward to next item number 4, which is the receipt of the minutes at the October 12th, 2024 Recreation Commission number 6, Area H, New Denver and Silverton, Volcano Lake minutes have been received. Commission has received them. No requirement for a motion. Item number 5, 5.1, there are no delegates scheduled for this commission meeting and no one present otherwise at this time. So moving right along, we'll go into item number 6, which is staff report. And we've got item 6.1. Sorry, we do have one. There's people online. 6.1, which is the dog training rental request item for the New Denver gym. The commission report dated March 1st 2024 from Tricia Davison, Regional Manager, Recreation and Client Services, regarding the dog training rental request. The New Denver Gym has been received. So do we need a motion for that? I see Trish, I think, online there. Yeah, great. Yeah. Would you like to speak to that report for us today? Give us a little bit of, I hope all the members of the commission were able to review it, but we have the staff member here who has produced that report. So just like to thank you for creating that report for the commission here. It's quite in depth and definitely something for us to think about. But if you want to give us a little overview, if you don't mind.
Through the chair, I certainly can, and good evening, everyone. I'm feeling a little bit like Commissioner Fike, so I feel his pain today. So I think I'm on the better end though at this point. So yes, at the last commission meeting, the request was that staff come back with some information related to the request of a dog training rental at the New Denver Gym. And just to refresh everyone's memory, some of the conversation around the table was the appropriateness of, I'll call it, animals in a public space, and what other concerns or issues may rise from that type of use, and just what considerations might want to be considered, and if we do this at any other facility within the regional district. So I happened to participate in dog training myself, and was able to reach out to a dog training business that through my own participation knew that they used all kinds of different facilities and thought they would be a good source of information. So this particular business uses things like elementary schools, sports fields, churches, and they do happen to also rent in one of our halls called the North Shore Hall, just outside of Nelson. And so what I tried to gather was just some of the information or kind of rules per se that the this particular user has encountered as part of their use of these types of spaces. And you can probably appreciate that each of them are going to come with all kinds of different things. Some of the basic information was certainly things like dogs must be leashed at all times. They must be vaccinated to be participating in any of these spaces. Processes were obviously requested to be in place by the renter to ensure that owners were respectful in cleaning up after their pets. That pets were not permitted anywhere close to, and in some cases, sports fields weren't permitted. In other cases, there seemed to be a bit more leniency with that. Certainly not permitted anywhere close to playgrounds or where children are apt to play. And often the renter was requested to participate in the cleaning of the facility itself. What I thought was kind of interesting, and I guess I didn't even really think about from my own participation, was as a result of the dog training itself, because it is such a highly controlled environment, that lots of the trainers really seem to think that really of all uses, it's probably the one where people are going to show the highest level of respect. It's not like, say, some other type of environment where the pets in this case may be more apt to be roaming free or not under the control of their owner. I would say there definitely seemed to be a high level of respect that, and it was seemed to be a privilege to have access to these spaces. And certainly this business owner took that responsibility very seriously. In short, and I think I make it in the summary comments on, I think it's page 2. In my opinion, there didn't seem to be any major showstoppers found that would suggest permitting dog training would be an issue. I do know that Selkirk College does have some high concern related to pets, because they do have people that have very strong sensitivities to animals and have to manage campus locations in all kinds of interesting ways. But in the case of, I would say, general public use in our spaces, I think that's something to be aware of, but I didn't find that as sort of an issue that seemed to be really prevalent. I think probably some of the bigger questions are whether there's resources available or willing to be put towards this type of rental in a space, consideration for what kind of other conflicts may arise recognizing that the space is very closely connected to your community gym and workout facility, and whether there are administrative practices and available supports to manage third-party bookings. I think the desire to, if the commission was interested in exploring the concept of allowing third-party uses of spaces, so these would be, say, for example, maybe the dog training is a good example, but it's certainly not the only one, where there's an entity that wants to come in to use a space, potentially charge admission or registration. Maybe it's their own business or something to the effect of that, where it's not just your general community use, which I think is how the facility is traditionally enjoyed by the community. We would be suggesting that the commission consider a number of points, and they're highlighted in the 6 bullets below. And just to quickly go through them, ensuring that there is some fair and equitable access to the opportunity to rent space would be something that should be considered. So I wouldn't take whether the dog training request is the whether that's a go or no go. I think the question is larger in relation to how you would permit any types of opportunities or people to use, or groups or businesses to use that space. Following the space allocation policy, which I believe some of you are familiar with, maybe all of you, the RDCK does have a very well thought out allocation policy that, if requested, we could certainly go over with commission at another meeting. Certainly establishing and identifying fees and charges that are appropriate for use of the rental space, and depending on what type of usage, so whether it's a commercial entity, a nonprofit entity, what those fees and charges, how they should be applied. There is a fees and charges policy within the RDCK that does outline this already, that may also be appropriate to consider. So just to know that some of that work may already be established for you. Cleaning or maintenance requirements. So certainly with increased use and different types of use becomes different types of responsibilities related to ensuring that the space is left and or maintained to a level that the next user would expect. And identifying resources to support the administration of facility use agreements, including insurance requirements and building management needs. I outlined, so of course, we're not advancing any budgetary considerations at this point. This report's predominantly for information purposes. I did include some information related to third-party rentals, just so that you could see both some of the fees that are applied within existing, I'll call it sort of like spaces within the regional district. One point, and I'm sure this goes without saying, but just to make sure it is clear for everyone, if we are renting to commercial entities, there is a responsibility to ensure that local governments are not subsidizing a private enterprise. So that's why the fees are structured in a way that show a higher rate of pay depending on the type of usage. And again, we could go into that in more detail at a future meeting if someone would like that to happen. And, you know, certainly allowing third-party rentals, there's benefits to that. And, you know, in many cases, it's the ability to offer a service that might not be otherwise able to be offered to serve a need within the community. So maybe I will leave it at that. And if there's any questions for either myself or Joe, feel free to fire away.
Thank you. I really appreciate that rundown on your report there, Tricia. I'll turn it over to the commission here. If anyone would like to ask any questions, Tricia, or any comments on that. Councillor or Commissioner Fike has his hand up there.
Yeah, Tricia, thanks so much. That was a great report, and I would be the last person to sort of not want to have trained dogs everywhere. And I guess what goes to my mind is capacity. So I'm assuming that Annabelle Pichet would be the one that would, once a policy was in place, would be the one that would be administering it. And I'm thinking that just related to the dogs, I know my daughter's dog doesn't come into my place because I've got friends that are quite allergic to dog dander. And that's kind of my big concern. And like we had a brief conversation, I'll allude to that if the dogs came in via another door, so they didn't come in via the gymnasium enter, the weight room entry, to avoid that, and the doors were closed, and things were swept up afterwards. You know, it's certainly it's conceivable in the middle of winter. I guess, you know, the worst case scenario, okay, so what if somebody that came in to work out in the gym or they came in to play pickleball afterwards was quite allergic to the dander? I mean, I guess we just have to deal with it. I mean, again, I'm the last one to want fewer trained dogs in the world. Anyway, it's a great report, and I would really like to pursue it, you know, direct staff in some way. I mean, Casey's probably got a way better way to word it, to put something in place if a fitness instructor, a yoga instructor, or a keto was in that gym before, so something was quite clear if a third party wanted to use that space, what would be entailed. But great report, Tricia, and thanks very much.
All right, thank you for your comments, Alternate Director Blake. Open back up the floor for any other commission members to speak on Tricia Davidson's report or ask her any questions. I also note that Commissioner Yakachuk is online with us now there too. Nice to see you, Peter.
Sorry, it took a little while.
No problemo. All right. So just again, does any other commission members wish to address the report or have any thoughts or just general conversation on that matter? No? Okay. All right. So go ahead, Commissioner Blake.
Oh, as a supplemental, Casey, so when we move on from this, what happens when we leave this point? Can we direct staff to pursue like a policy for New Denver gym for third-party rental? Or is that what's going to happen now? Or I would like to see something sort of proceed from this, if possible. I don't know, I need more help from your other commissioners. What do you think?
I see Joe, Manager Chirico is ready to jump in here. So I'll let him, he's got some thoughts, I think, on this, but I hear what you're saying, and I like the lines of thought that you're having there. But Manager Chirico, did you want a supplemental on that?
Yeah, through the chair. John, you have an allocation policy. We're using the RDPK allocation policy, and we've worked through what those times are that are available for rentals and that, so that piece is done. The only piece that may be missing is whether we think the small room rental fees that are on page 2 of the report are appropriate. I would say that they are, like, they do fit what the similar type facility that we have in the regional district and the size of that space. And at the moment, what we have is always to remember that in the allocation policy, just because you may be the first group of person that has rented a space, that doesn't mean that that's the way it is forever, right? If there's a conflict over time between two potential user groups, we go to that policy to determine highest and best use. And highest and best use commercial, just to be aware, commercial is at the lowest end of the priority. It's always supporting community groups that rises to the top. So just so everyone is aware. So you do have a whole bunch of the fundamental building blocks. I don't know that there's necessarily a missing policy, other than if we felt that what the rental rate per hour were, There was a question, would it be Annabelle? Yes, it would be Annabelle. And so all of those pieces, we do have in place. So one thing that would be a challenge is that we would probably need to reach out to Village of New Denver staff because that facility is controlled with a key fob system. And we would just have, so we would just have to have a process for whoever that renter is, be able to sign out a key fob that enables them entry at the time that they're allowed to enter. And the only other procedure or process you may want to have is that you may want, in this case, to identify a different doorway for those participants that enter other than walking through the gymnasium. So it may be that there would be a specific thing, a specific contract piece here that would say enter the doorway at the back of the, at the back of the gymnasium, which is one of the emergency exits. So the instructor would be responsible for ensuring that it's open for those participants to come in and that it's closed up afterwards. So those are the only things that I think you may want to consider.
Supplemental through the chair to Joe then. So if, say, I'm aware of somebody who just got their fitness instructor's certificate in New Denver. So if they wanted to pursue doing a class and renting that space, then they would go to Annabelle and Annabelle would have it clear what's required. Is that true?
Yeah, so through the chair, when it comes to fitness and those kinds of instructional programs, what Annabelle would do, she would let our programming team, actually, you know what, that's a great question for Trish. I don't want to jump in there because I don't want to assume that I'm up to date on the latest features for programming. Trish, do you mind taking that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So through the chair, so to the question of an instructor, say for fitness, what we would want to try to have them brought on board as an RDCK employee first. It's a much simpler process. There's way more control and less risk of liability and a host of other things related to running those services through us. Of course, there are people that don't want to do that. So if they run through us, they're being paid a wage. We manage all the advertising and registration and all the other, things that go with putting on a program. Obviously, if it's a commercial entity, they're going to pay that, say roughly $48 an hour. And my guess is that when they have to turn around and charge a sufficient amount of money to make it worth their time, often people in that commercial category will take concern with that rate. And so they end up with two options. And I understand why parties like to go one way or another. But it is an important thing to just be aware of, that the minute you throw that commercial fee in, and there's a lot of questions that people would be asking as to how we know what fee to charge for a rental space. So in short, I think I may have answered your question. I just also want to go back a couple of steps. So just to talk about some other considerations. So Joe mentioned that you have an allocation policy. Obviously, there's some things that could be dealt with around control points for entry, assuming the Village of New Denver is willing to step in and help us. That's all possible. The part we didn't address was in relation to if you end up, and not necessarily with the dog rental, I'm not at all suggesting that this would be a problematic group. It's more that if there is an additional capacity outside of what your current cleaning regime is, just purely based on numbers of people or types of use, that would have to be readdressed through your budgeting process, and I guess potentially capacity of people who are already doing the work. So just to be aware that There are things that are a bit unknown about this at this point, and even Annabelle's capacity. You know, Commissioner Feig, I think you're right. We believe that Annabelle would be able to do it, but of course she's not on site and is not always able to be on site, even to meet somebody new coming into the space, to orient them to the venue or to review whatever other things we might want them to do. Just the nature of the New Denver space requires a little bit of different thinking than if you have a staff person, say, at the building at all times. So just a couple of other pieces of information. Not even 100% sure if I answered your question.
Commissioner Feig through the chair. Thanks, Tricia. No, that makes a lot of sense. To become an employee clears out a whole bunch of hurdles to just get it done. If it was a fitness instructor, no, that's great. And so I think, I mean, I live a block from the gym, so I could help in whatever way. And I'm sure as long as it wasn't a huge time sucker, that the village could accommodate that, you know, just in terms of giving somebody a fob. But yeah, the idea that they're an employee, that makes a whole bunch of sense. And I think it would make sense to this person as well. But, you know, that's a great answer. Thank you.
Thanks again, Tricia and Joe, and also alternate director Mike, for your comments. Yeah, it sounds like it's a bit of a multifaceted type of situation. There's lots of things to consider. Couple things I was going to ask about with the cleaning concern in the budget, and we not having someone on site, we would have the onus upon the person who was going to be renting the space to look after cleaning up after in general. Is that correct? Or are we just talking about having extra cleaning in case it doesn't happen, or as a additional cleaning? Is it possible you could answer that, Tricia?
Yeah, through the chair, in my experience, it would be largely if, so one of two things. One might be that, say, the renter, something happens and it requires a different type of cleaning than what the renter may do as based sort of the standard expectation. I think definitely putting some onus on the renter to do some basic cleaning is appropriate. I think it's just recognizing that when you have different types of uses, and of course this could go much further than dog training or a fitness class. There could be any number of parties interested in booking that space, and all of those just come with some nuances to be aware of. And of course, many of them you can't entirely prepare for. It's more that if you start to notice that, hey, this isn't kind of keeping up to the standard that New Denver expects, then, you know, then that's where we either have to supplement with staff or find some other alternative to sort of just make sure the space is appropriate for the next use.
Okay, thank you for your response on that. I think it makes sense with along the lines that what I was thinking. And then, so with this report, it obviously addresses fairly specifically the dog training request. But if a motion is put forward that recommends directing staff to allow for third-party commercial rentals, is that something that will cover what we're, you know, in addition to that motion, there would also be some pieces I think I'd like to add on that there's appropriate staff capacity in the Village of New Denver will accommodate a key fob, and also that entrance points will be adhered to. But does it need to be specifically around dog training, or is it allowing for dog training classes to happen, or is it going to be for third-party rental of that space? Do you have any thoughts on that? Which either way it would go for a motion?
Yeah, through the chair, I would suggest that it can be relatively simple. I think it can be that you endorse or wish that staff develop a process to support third-party use of space, including nonprofit, private, and commercial rentals of the New Denver gym. And then we will take all those other details into consideration as we start to develop the contracts and details that would come with something someone would sign as part of use of that space. So maybe to use the dog training one as an example, and this would take a bit of time. This isn't something we can turn around overnight. But so with the dog training one, there may be some specific details that we outline that are unique to New Denver. And that might be through Annabelle's knowledge, maybe a couple of commissioners she might reach out to say, you know, hey, here's some stuff that we're thinking that might be appropriate for New Denver. What do you think? As far as some contract responsibilities to that renter. And then it's really, I think in the case of New Denver, it's going to be a little bit of some of the commissioners or people who use the space to help provide feedback as to how it's working, because we won't necessarily know or have, you know, feet on the ground all the time to see how that shared use is going for the community. And at some point you could also amend this and you say, you know, hey, this type of rental isn't working for us. It's not feasible anymore. And then you can adjust your processes accordingly.
Much appreciated for the summary on that. So with that said, I would like to motion that the commission direct staff to develop a third-party policy, written it down here. Pearl, in between the motion here, did you capture what Tricia originally said about developing a third-party policy for the use of space for private, non-for-profit groups at the New Denver and Area Fitness Center? I'll do that one more time here. I'll put the motion on the floor. Okay, so I would like to move that the commission direct staff to create a third-party policy for the use of the New Denver and Area Fitness Center gymnasium space for non-for-profit / commercial users. Period.
Through the chair, can you just change the word policy for that? Oh, policy.
Okay, thank you. Amend that to read as a process, not a policy. If you have that, Pearl, let me know.
Would you, can you please just repeat that just one more time?
Sure. That the Recreation Commission number 6 direct staff to create a third-party process to allow for the rental of the New Denver and Area Fitness Center gymnasium space to non-for-profit / commercial organizations. Period.
Thank you.
All right. Looking for a seconder. If anyone would like to second that, I've got right across from me. It's been a long day here. Okay. Sorry, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Johnson, second. All in favor? Got 3 around the table. Got 3 online, and then 1 voice for Wesley. If you are there still.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Okay, great. So then that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much to the commission for the time, and also the staff very much for taking the time to get that information to us so we can hopefully make a good decision down the road. Well, we have made a decision, so looking forward to seeing what staff comes back as far as process was. Moving right along to item number 6.2, that's the service number S229, Recreation Commission number 6, New Denver Silverton Area Draft Operational Budget Report. And got Manager Chirico present. Would you like to give us a bit of a presentation or a summarization of your report?
Yeah, so through the chair, thanks everyone for being here today. There are, just to start, at the end of the presentation, what I would like commission to be able to do is just to give direction to staff on whether you'd like to use option A for the budget or option B. So what I'm going to explain, I'm going to try and go through the report starting on page 1, and I'll try and just explain the differences between the options, and then we'll actually look at the actual budget itself. So one of the primary difference between option A and option B is the requisition. So just to make sure, for anyone that's new to RDPK budgeting, and the way that it works is that if a service, if its operation have a surplus, and all that means in the case, what a surplus means is that the revenue has exceeded the operating expense. In some in a municipality, that would be just general, that would be general revenue. In a regional district, that stays with the service. So in this case, option A actually right now shows that the requisition could decrease $8,259. Option B just shows that that requisition remains the same. So that's one of the primary differences. What is the same in both budgets is the operational budget. So the operational budget in both option A and option B are exactly the same. The places, so the operating budget increased from between 2023 to 2024 by $8,584. So that's a 13.98% increase on the operating budget. That primarily comes from a couple of places. The first part is employee cost. So that's going to rise $2,352. Most of that is in direct response to the regional district cost of living increase. So that was a 6.2 increase to regional district wages in 2020. The other piece that is in this budget is also in the wages is, well, we have Pearl. So we have a meeting coordinator that gets paid in order to take a minute of the meeting. So those are the two primary changes. The other piece is the general administration and community services fees. Those rose $2,163. So these oftentimes cause confusion at tables. But what those fees are is that one of the provisions under the municipal act is that every regional district service has to cover all of its costs. So that includes the cost of things like payroll to pay employees, HR to support those employees, finance to support those operations. So those fees are about supporting those overhead operations of the regional. Sometimes it gets a little bit mixed up. Those overheads really don't change what the taxation for a particular area is that much. It's just really where it shows up. In this case, those kinds of things show up in the service level, but really these are about overhead that would be there, whether it's or not. Always a confusing thing to in 2023, grants have gone up $600. That's an area that, depending upon the option, we could make an adjustment to. But one of the big changes, the primary change, is actually installing Wi-Fi at the gymnasium. There's actually a couple of advantages to that. So if you're new to the commission, the Village of New Denver manages our FOSS system. And so that's the, Richard, what do we call anyway, that's the little key that you get that you just tap and it allows you in the door. RFID, there we go. RFID entry system. So right now, the Village of New Denver staff, when people go in and get their membership and they get their FOSS, they then, at a number of times during the week, have to move down to the gymnasium and actually upload that information into that system so that it lets new people in, or else it wouldn't work. Partly what the Wi-Fi does is it enables them to do it remotely. So that will enable them to do updates more quickly. The other advantage is that, of course, it provides Wi-Fi at the center. It is a 5G Wi-Fi system. So we will have to look, we may want to be very careful about allowing public access to it and overloading that system, but we will take a look at it. So our IT department, in particular, when they chose this option, chose it because in particular it allows that staff efficiency to the BOSS system. So it works for that. But it does come at a cost. So essentially this year, we will pay and own the actual technology outright and then pay a monthly fee. So in 2024, that's about $2,900. It actually decreases in 2025 because at that point we paid for the hardware. We're actually just paying for the monthly subscription. The biggest change in the budget is that surplus coming from 2023 into 2024. It's actually $11,000 greater than it was coming from 2022 into 2023. As we go through, I'll just explain some of the other benefits. So one of the things that will happen this year is we do have an employee, her name is Annabelle. I don't like to really talk about employees' names too much because it's a position, but that position helps us in the valley, up in the north part of the valley here, and also in the southern part of the valley, deliver recreation programs. The one thing that we didn't do last year was allocate any of the salary that position, when that position worked up in this area with some of our administrative tasks. We didn't charge anything for the service. That was really borne by the other service, which is S231. This year, we will make sure that those kinds of things are accounted for. The other piece that maybe not for tonight's discussion, but definitely for a future discussion, it may be tonight's discussion, but I think that the commission should consider whether it feels that having a reserve fund is beneficial to the service. The reason that might be something that the commission likes to do or would like to do is that it actually enables us to plan for future work, not, like, for example, like refinishing of the gymnasium floor. It could be the future purchase of equipment, and it may even be something that's not necessarily even related to that building. But it allows us to plan forward and just be prepared for those costs that may come in the future. So what we will, so I'll just do the pros and cons, and then we'll go to looking at the actual two options. So the advantage of budget, which is the first advantage, is that the requisition is reduced. There is still a $1,100 budgeted to accumulated surplus for the commission, which could be at another time could be readjusted inside the budget through a recommendation to the board to amend the budget, or it could be used in 2025 to manage a requisition increase. The con is that the requisition, what that would bring the requisition down to is actually well below the actual operating budget, even for last year or this year. So it means that we could have a spike in requisition in 2025. Option B, the pro is that the requisition is flat, so there's actually no increase to taxation. There's actually a larger amount that's budgeted to accumulated surplus, which is $9,539. And again, the commission could reallocate that during the year if there's a need to, or it could be used to be brought forward into 2025 and to reduce that requisition in 2025. So depending upon the commission recommendation and board approval, this may be more sustainable 5-year plan versus option A. The only con to that option is that the requisition is not reduced in 2024. So I'll just do a brief overview of what these things mean. Sorry for the black on gray background. Unfortunately, the reports that I have available to me to print off somehow have this type of formatting. So when you're looking at a regional district budget, any item that starts with a 4, where the account starts with a 4, that's a revenue account. Any item that starts with a 5, that is an expense account. So in attachment A, if you look under the column that says 2023 budget, it says 47,834. So that's requisition. The more common word for requisition is taxation. In 2024, you can see that decrease to 39,575. So that is that piece that we're talking about, and it's that line that's one of the primary differences between the two budgets. User fees, you can see that user fees, we increased the budget to 5,500, but you can actually see that in 2023, the service actually outperformed that. It was nearly $7,000 was generated last year in user fees. Generally, if we had a trend of 2 years of that type of revenue, we would bump up that forecasted budget higher. But as that was the first year that we saw that, we bumped it up. It's still significant bump, so 20% bump, increasing it by $1,000. But we want to be cautious, because the one thing local governments don't like to do is they don't like to run a deficit, which means we exceed our revenue by our. In 2024, there's that increase to salaries and benefits. So when I said those employee costs rose last year, that is actually both of those numbers combined. There's some minor incidental costs, but the next big cost is contracted services. Just so we're aware, that's where that increase is for the Wi-Fi. So right now, that's in contracted services. When this budget is in its final production, that money will actually move to something called communication. But that's the line that I had available to myself to do this in this time. We have repairs and maintenance, operating supplies. The operating supplies are primarily the supplies that we have for keeping the gymnasium and the fitness center clean. We have equipment. That's been a stable budget line, and essentially that is where the commission shows great looking forward. Quite honestly, that is why that fitness center is very well equipped and is a good fitness center, is because of those investments. That's where that comes. So almost all of the fitness equipment has been purchased through that. Rentals, that is what we pay IHA. We should just always remember that IHA is very generous in what they charge us for that facility. The Village of New Denver is very generous in terms of helping us manage the facility. And also, the village has actually put community work funding into that building to help keep it a viable option for the future. So there's a really good partnership there that makes that space work. Grants, those are the grants that, thanks to Richard, he added on the agenda, the piece for planning for our grant intake. So that's what those grants are, community grants that go to the community. Accumulated operating surplus. So this is that line that primarily changes between attachment A and attachment B. What that means is that when we have a budget surplus from the year previous, we, instead of using it as revenue in the next year, we plan on spreading that out over future years. So it goes into that fund, and that stays inside the service. It goes into that account line, and then it can be used next year to smooth taxation. But it's also that amount that could, instead of it going into accumulated surplus, we could talk about how we put some of that money into reserve. And so that is fundamentally, that's where that might come from in a future conversation or even tonight. The transfer to other service, that first one, that's 59500, that is every once in a while we have one of our maintenance employees who come up and do work on fitness equipment and help me. The general affinity is the general affinity, and the clean services fee. That is what funds our overhead for operating recreation across the regional district. That's why Tricia and I are here tonight helping. So those are those primary pieces. So that's, excuse me, looking at attachment A. Attachment B, all of those expenses should be are the same except for the requisition amount, which you can see in this scenario. In 2023, again, it's 47,834. In 2024, it's 47,834. So we're just saying that keep that flat, allocate some of that surplus to the accumulated operating surplus, which, you know, that is line 59100. And you can see there it says 9,359. And when you look at 2025, you can see that the prior year's surplus says 9,359. So that's how that would flow through the budget over time. But all of the other numbers should be exact.
Okay, thank you, Manager Chirico, for your budget report and explanation. I'll open it up to the commission for questions or comments on that. So feel free to raise your hand, or I'll recognize you. And Wes, I know you're only on voice there, so let me know if you'd like to jump in, and I'll open it up. Okay, Commissioner or alternate director, like, here, recognize you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to be wary. Thank you. Through the chair to Joe. So there, option B or attachment B, there's no sort of increase in taxation as a choice. And it makes sense to me that the accumulated operating surplus, is it possible to, take half of that and put it into reserve? I'm trying to get it straight in my mind, what it would be like if the treadmill calved or something like that. What's the advantage to putting it in a reserve as opposed to an accumulated operating surplus?
Casey, you're muted if Joe's trying to respond to Commissioner Fike.
Very good.
Sorry about that.
It was such a brilliant response too, now I forgot. If we invest into reserve, John, that money then is actually, it's invested, so it does gain interest. So that's one of the advantages. And it hopefully would allow, I find that services that have reserves and start looking forward actually become better managed. And so that's one of the other advantages, is that we actually start to plan where we want the service to go. John, John, was that?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks, Joe. So, there's no disadvantage at all. I mean, just if we wanted to take half of the accumulated surplus or the whole accumulated surplus, would there be a disadvantage to either?
Well, if you made this year, what commission could do today is direct staff to set up a reserve for S229. You don't need to make a decision about allocating money to that right now. We could allocate that at a later meeting in the year, as you know what the results of this year are, and you know what that potential outlook for the 2025 budget may be. So you may want to wait to do that, and that's perfectly reasonable as well. And actually, my suggestion would be that you wait, and because right now you can see that even with that, there is an increase in 2025. So it goes from 47,834 in attachment B. It goes from a little bit less in attachment A. But 2025, right now, if we stay on a similar trend, would be about 56,505. And again, to understand that that's not because it's a big jump in the operating budget. That's because that surplus is actually partially funding the actual operating.
Through the chair. Thanks, Joe. So, your recommendation is to not create a reserve line, leave it for now and see what happens?
If I'm not mistaken, and Joe's just turned it over to me, that we would create a reserve line potentially if we want, but not need to allocate any of the surplus to that reserve at this time. But simply direct staff to, yeah, you got a thumbs up on that one? Okay.
Is that option A or option B?
So that's kind of its own, yeah, that's outside of option A or option B. Right now,
Okay.
yeah, we're just talking about simply creating a reserve so that we can put monies that are surplus towards that reserve for future replacement of equipment or operational projects or, yeah, and also grants or things like that too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Sorry, capital projects and not operational. Sorry.
then if I could just speak.
Please do, yeah, I'll get you over here.
Okay, I'm going to the basics of the thing. I'm looking at the option A and option B. And there's no, what happens internally, whether you whatever else you want to do it. What's the option in attachment A and it was option 1 or option A. We get a drop in requisition, which is offset the following year at the higher, but the same as, but 2 years is still balanced out. In other words,
Correct.
the requisition of adding requisition of 2024 and 2025 together is, my math is right, is about 103. And it's the same on option B.
Correct. Just how you do it.
Yeah, it's just how you get there, but that's internal accounting in my mind. I mean, there's quite circumstances one way or another. But to me, optically, it looks nice to have a nice smooth time in seconds. Whereas if you turn around and drop your requisition, there's also the possibility of that going back to the board and the board saying, why you set the big company?
Correct.
So it's it'd be much smoother and also better to use S&P, even though the internal accounting can shift. I'm not worried about that. That's what it looks like. Oh,
Through the chair, that's exactly.
All right. We'd like to get a motion.
yeah, I would move that we see.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Do we need to rephrase that motion? I'm just wondering. That's fine. Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Fike.
If you can hear me still okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, so I've got, 1, 2, 5, in favor with it as well, and all opposed. Commissioner McKeel, can you hear okay? Sorry, I might have you quiet. You're muted, I think, there. And also Commissioner Seville.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. And
I'm
sorry.
in favor as well.
Okay, so we have unanimous approval of that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but through the chair, can I please ask to have the motion repeated? I couldn't hear it.
Oh, sure. So, Commissioner Johnson, the motion, if you want to repeat it.
What we recommend for the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, that we recommend that option B that we support.
Okay. So Pearl, the recommendation is that the rec commission number 6 recommend option number B in reference to Manager Chirico's budget presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, and then I did call all opposed though, and there was are unanimous, so the motion is carried. And then, so we're still on that topic, and I'll make a motion. I would like to move that the Recreation Commission number 6 establish a reserve fund for service S229. And seconder, I've got Clarence seconded. Commissioner Denbach. Is there any discussion around that? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. Seeing everybody, and Commissioner Seville, just if you want to chime in, can't see you.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay. Unanimous, and so none opposed. Motion is carried. Right, moving right along to our next new item of business. Nearly gotten it a couple times here. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. 7.3, that is the spring grant allocation process. And did you want to speak to that right now?
Yes.
Sure.
We have established a sort of a time frame in the past, and I don't know how I'm going to get the calendar, but the important part of the process are we have to sign up for the Valley Road ad going in. I believe we have two going 2 times before the application deadline closes. And then we need a short space in between that until as a commission to meet, and then that has to be timed with next board meeting.
Right,
Of the already case.
right.
So, that's all fit together, and I think we should work back from the board, from the board, meeting. I don't know what the schedule is.
So through the chair, the one in April is on April 18th. May will be May 16th.
April 18th,
April 15th, May 16th.
May 16th one is the one I would think that we only have to go, we have to back off. So we need a meeting of the commission several days prior to that, at least a week prior. Remember.
Correct. We have a scheduled meeting on the 30th of May. So you're saying it's too late. Okay. So we'll need to have a special meeting then. Right. Okay. So typically the timeline for that, so we're talking to May 16th and we want to have
At least 10 days before that.
okay, May 6th.
And May 2nd. That is for that meeting. Thursday.
Yeah.
And then we would not go to
Right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. And then we can sort out the advertisements with the Valley Voice group staff. Yeah. Okay. So, do you like to put a motion out there? Or?
We have our next next meeting at
May 2nd is the Thursday.
okay, so we have it on the list, we have it. That's the application. We have that grant application. Nothing for the grant application. So then on 4:30 on the 26th.
Through the chair, we can't hear Richard clearly when he leans back. I wonder if he could speak more loudly to the speaker. Spike.
Okay, next commission meeting tentatively then, as per this motion would be the 3rd. And that the grant application closed on the 4:30 on the 26th. And that the staff work this time frame back from that to give people as much time as possible to make at least one ad in the Valley Voice and hopefully two.
You said the 3rd, I think, but.
Yeah, today.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said the 3rd, just for in case anybody's recording that, or.
Right, May 2nd.
Thursday, May 2.
It should be May 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's May 2nd.
Okay.
As our next commission.
And Pearl, were you able to get that motion down? Okay.
No, I couldn't hear it. It was very garbled.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Sure. Thanks. Sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. So the motion on the table, if I'm not incorrect, is that the Recreation 6th Commission move its May 30th meeting to May 2nd, to replace it, and have the spring grant allocation process deadline April 26th at 4:30 p.m. And that intake period be open prior to with 2 advertisements in the Valley Voice.
Okay, thank you.
And do we have a seconder on that one?
I'll second.
Okay, got Peter. Okay, Commissioner, yeah, Chuck seconds that motion. All in favor, all right, is there any further discussion on that? Any discussion? Okay, seeing, hearing none. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please vote no.
I'm in favor.
Thank you, Commissioner Settle. That means the motion was carried unanimously. Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to correspondence. Oh, my apologies. Item number 7. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, my apologies. New business. So we're on. Did I jump ahead to the spring grant before the other two? I did. My apologies. So 7.2 is the water containers at New Denver Area Fitness Center. This is my agenda item. Someone had brought it forward to my attention that there's no easy way to fill water bottles at the New Denver Area Fitness Community Center. At the current sink faucet, it's very short and people aren't able to get their bottles underneath that. So I was asked about that, and I also asked for a letter to bring forward, but they did not provide one as of yet. But there was a simple solution that I did talk to Joe about, which was having staff change the faucet so that it's a higher faucet. As an intern workable option to fill the water containers of folks coming to use the center until we move forward into any other options that are available. So I would like to put a motion forward that the commission number 6 directs staff to change the water faucet at the New Denver and Area Community Fitness Center to a workable solution to fill personal water containers. And we have a seconder for that. Councilor Denbach, Commissioner Denbach. All right. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. Okay, call the question. All in favor? Hey,
I'm in favor.
thanks, Wes. Commissioner Settle. All right. And motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And I know I'm working back here. I somehow jumped ahead to what I wrote down in the spring grant allocation. 7.1 is the Wi-Fi access, but as it's already been allocated in the budget, that there doesn't really need to be any further conversation on that matter. Just for information. Now I'm moving on to correspondence. 8.1, which is a request for a letter of support from the West Kootenai Football Club, which was received on January 22nd, 2024. Hopefully the members have had an opportunity to review said letter. Dispatched on here as well. I like that. Very, very last? Okay. Thanks. That was the part. We're into it. Okay. So hopefully the members of the commission have had an opportunity to review it. I think it's a worthy aspect of our recreational opportunity in the Spokane area, not just for New Denver, that folks come up and down the valley and would be able to utilize the fields better down at the Centennial Park. They have gone after some grant funding already. There was a bit of a timeline, so this is a bit after the fact, but after speaking with Director Jacob Butt, he indicated that we'd be going after other grants as well. So a letter of support in general for this project would be of great value to them. And I'll just put the motion on the floor. I'd like to move that the Recreation Commission number 6 send a letter of support to West Kootenai Minor Football for a grant application to revitalize the village in New Denver's Centennial Park. Need a seconder first, sorry. Thanks for discussion. Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, okay. we have a seconder for that motion? Okay, I've got Commissioner Padfield. Second it. So now it's on the floor. Thank you, please, Commissioner Johnson. That's okay. I jumped the gun too.
Okay, is everybody hear me now? Will this, my question is will this prohibit the, football club from applying for a fixed grant?
Good question. Maybe I can.
Ask staff on that. Would there be any reason why this would prohibit it, Rec 6 for allocating or receiving a application from this group?
Through the chair. No, I understand why the question is being asked. This would be, you may want to clear that this is for external grant. Because I think what Richard brings up a good point. And it's not so much that you wouldn't do this, but you just may want to make it specific that it's for external grants from recreation number 6. Because it's not that what you're saying, you're pre-approving any requests that they make to recreation number 6, because you yourself are a granting body. So I understand what the concern on messaging.
Sure. This one seems to be the other one for voice right now. Okay, so if I'm to understand correctly, an amendment to that motion would be that the Recreation Commission number 6 send a letter of support to the West Kootenai Minor Football for external grant applications to revitalize the village of New Denver's Centennial Park. Okay, all right. Okay, that's the amended motion. Can I have a seconder for that again, if possible? Got Commissioner Padfield indicating. All right. And any further discussion on this one? Any commissioners want to speak on that matter? Yeah.
Through the chair, Commissioner Fike, who's writing the letter? Is it RDCK staff?
Through the chair, we will write it for the chair's signature. Okay. So it will come under on RDCK letterhead, but with Chair Law's signature.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, and on to our last item, which is not quite a last item, our number 9, public time. As the chair, I'd like to call for any questions from the public. Have none present here, but if there's anyone online, this is your opportunity to ask questions of the commission, Recreation Commission number 6. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Oh, and that was called at 8:30 p.m. Calling for questions from the public at 8:30 p.m. All right, onward to our next meeting. So there's going to be a slight amendment here on the agenda. It reflects May 30th, 2024 at 7 p.m. That will now be May 2nd. So the next Recreation Commission number 6 meeting will be scheduled at May 2nd. And I will have to amend that. I did have it booked at the Knox Hall for the village in Denver, but let's see if May 2nd is available. All right. Thank you, everybody. Last item is the adjournment of the meeting. Have someone make that motion, please. Denbach, motion and seconder. All right. Thank you. Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, second. And I don't believe we need a all in favor for this one. Is there? I can't say we don't, but I'll call it anyway. All in favor? That's for A? Okay.
I'm in
All
favor.
right. Okay, great. Thanks, Les. So it's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming in person here and online. I look forward to hearing the grant deliberations May 2nd, and in person and online as well, if we can. It'd be great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks again, Tricia. Great report.
Earl, can you just leave